Okay. So, any other organization type of questions, things of that kind? So just to review where we are, we'll have 3 exams, and they will not be cumulative, and they'll have a few short answers to make sure you're paying attention to the actual information or whatever it is that's being covered. And the rest of the exam will be that you write on some things that we ask you to analyze or hold forth or discuss. And it'll be stuff we cover here in class. Also, when we do the exams, you can bring your books, you can bring some notes on note cards, not your whole thing. We don't want you to be in a situation where you're worried about forgetting something. This is not the point of the exam. The point of the exam is to produce what you can produce with what you know, not worry about what you don't know. So I'm not, and also I find if I let people bring stuff, they don't want to cheat then. Because there's nothing to cheat, they've already given them everything they need to cheat with. So that settles that problem. So we don't have a question of so-called cheating, which I don't understand what that word means. People talk about cheating on their wives or their husbands. I don't know what that word means. I mean, you either have rapport with people or you don't. The word cheating is a cheesy American expression that I have no idea what it's supposed to mean. But the same with classes. I don't think there should be any need to do anything so-called cheating, because I give you everything that you need to cheat with. So there's no problem. The main thing is to show what's in your brain. I don't see how you can cheat on that. So not just in your brain, in your ability to express yourself, which is not necessarily a matter of intelligence. Some people are really good at expressing themselves. You say, well, that person can write really well and I can't. Well, that's a part of the world. That's something, you know. That's what the issue is. If someone's a clever writer, they're already 20 paces ahead. That means they can write on anything and do well. Well, that's a skill. That's something to be admired. That's not something to be complained about. That would be the most useful skill that you could develop. To be able to express your thoughts in writing is probably the most important thing you can have in this world. So it isn't often so much as much as you know or what you know. It's how you can get it out and express it to others. So you can't really envy or complain or say, oh, someone else can do that better than me. You can do it too. Maybe not as well as that other person if you just practice. You know, a person says, I can't swim a lap, I can't run down the course, I can't run a mile. Yes, you can if you practice. And the thing that one practices at is, of course, the thing that one's weakest at. If you have a bad leg or something, so you work at it. You work out on it. If you don't write well, how do you get to write better? By writing. The more you write, the better you get. The more you read your stuff, correct it, write it again, write it again, write it again, you get better. If you don't type well, how do you get better? By typing. So all these things are just, you get better at them through repeating them over and over and over again until you get some facility. That's the way it is done. So these are actually straightforward things, and if you're not doing them or can't do them, you know what it usually means? You're probably a little lazy. And I'm not blaming you because I'm lazy too. So, I mean, everyone doesn't want to do something. That's the whole point of doing what you don't want to do. I don't really want to run a mile every day, and believe me, I don't. But the person who does, I have to admire. Or even 5 miles, it's like they're overdoing it. Because, they get themselves out there and they go and do it. And the rest of us who don't, I mean, let's be honest, we're just a bit late. you know, just, we don't want to get up and concentrate and do what we have to do. So same with exams. You could do well at any school you went to if you just worked at it. And that doesn't mean so much reading the material as reading somewhat, but then practicing writing. You can do that. You can pass any course in the humanities anyway. That's, I don't know about, I can't speak for physics and chemistry and art science. That's something. I don't think people should be tortured with those courses if they're not going to be physicists, scientists, and so on. All right, that's my lecture for the day. Let's go back to the movie to give time people a chance to get here. So we were talking about the people in the movie. First of all, was the movie any fun, did you think? Yeah. Yeah, how many had seen the movie? Okay, not too many of you, so that was a new experience for you, so that's a good thing. I think when you saw the movie, you probably felt after you saw it, you probably should have seen it, right? Would have been a fun movie to see when it came out, and I think so too. I'm surprised so few people have actually seen this movie, because it's a real good family movie. It's a real, you know, feel-good movie, plus it's somewhat instructive. And it's got some good things. It's a good way to spend a couple of hours. And even if you're on a date, or, I don't know, do people still date? Whatever people do with each other when they go out with each other. I don't know what it's called anymore. Something, what you do. But even if you do go out with somebody, it's a nice way to spend an evening, just to watch that and have a laugh. I know in my house, my wife often still puts it on when people come or the kids come just for some laugh. She likes the Southwest. She puts it on just for fun. And it never fails to amuse. So I try to do things in the class that will be useful to you or that you will remember. So that's one of the reasons I do this movie. Plus I think it tells you something about Southwestern life. So we talked about some of the miracles, some of the spirit beings. The two people who start and end the movie, the old man and his associate. The associate is, I think you should focus on him. I don't know what his name was. And again, does anyone remember what the associate's name was?
Joe's dad.
Joe's dad, yeah. Is that what he's called? Joe's dad? That's good enough. Joe's dad is good enough. Joe's dead dad, I guess.
The credits had him as Coyote Angel.
What was he?
The credits had him as Coyote Angel.
Coyote Angel? Well, I don't know, maybe they called him that at one point, Coyote Angel, huh? Sounds cool to me. Okay, so Dead Dad or Coyote Angel or Joe's dad, he's a troublemaker. But a troublemaker in the end to a good end. He wants to work people up. He wants to get things moving in the way he thinks they should get moving. And so I've compared him to the native southwestern deity of Kokopelli. I think that's something of what the American native Indians of that part of the region. Thanks a lot. Oh, wow. Found all this stuff, huh? She's just in time. She brought, I don't know, this is a image of Kokopelli someone gave me. I think it's a hat rack here. I'm not sure what it was for, but I have some other ones too. But there he is. He's usually playing a flute and dancing. There's different representations of him. This is a pretty bleak looking one, but it's big enough to, well, you're right on time there. We're just talking about Kokopelli, so there you are. So that actually gives you some idea of the kind of representation you find him as. But he's a dancing nature spirit of some kind with a mischievous attitude. And I think that the old man, what do you call him? Coyote Angel? Coyote Angel has a lot of that to it. The very fact that they title him as Coyote Angel means he's a kind of mixed with a Christian angel. So you get the mixture of Native American themes with Christian angels. How we focus, any good?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thanks a lot. So you you get it fixed with Christian angels, and they're the mixture of Native American and Christianizing symbols. You want to close that door over there? Because we got the people yakking over in the corridor there. It seems like the yak session is on. Thanks a lot. That room over there is always extremely yacky. This side isn't so bad, so that one. Anyway, so this movie likes to combine symbols. So of course, the high point of the movie is when I think the student from the East, who is supposed to be someone like you and me, well, I guess he's supposed to be someone like you and me. He's certainly supposed to be someone like me. I don't know when I was young. I don't know if he's supposed to be someone like you see yourselves as, but I would have been like that guy, I think, somewhat. And he's learning about Southwestern Spanish-American religious feelings, mixed, as you know, as Spanish Americans in the Southwest are with Indian characteristics too. I mean, if you speak to people who are, shall we say, Hispanic, okay, if they come from the pure Hispanic areas, maybe they don't have a lot of American Indian blood, but when you start talking about Chicano or something, I think you're also mixing American Indian blood in there as well as any other. I haven't done the DNAs, so I don't know what all is running around in people who claim to be Chicano or Hispanic background. But certainly in the Southwest, you're getting Native American Indian blood mixed in with other genealogical background. So he comes and he learns. So what's the big climax for the young man who's learning about acculturation here? Yeah, I think when he prays to the statue, he finally gives up. He says, okay, you win. I'm going to do the way you do it. And I think, was he drinking beer or something, is he? And he actually gives the statue a drink or something like that, or feeds it or whatever. And obviously, I mean, in your churches, those of you who go to church, I don't think you normally feed Jesus anything to eat. Normally you're drinking his blood, as far as I remember. Seems to be pretty frightening thing. A little bit pagan, mystery religion sort of thing. A bit bloodthirsty, actually, in my mind, but don't judge by my view. I mean, I don't approve of drinking blood of anybody, but oh, it's symbolic and it's only wine, okay, I'll let you go on that one. I mean, Christian countries do tend to be a bit bloodthirsty, and I have a feeling there may be something in this symbolic communion that causes them to be a bit violent. I know most people don't see it that way, but just think of it. If you keep seeing someone on a cross with blood gushing out of him, and wounds and everything, and then you're always drinking blood or eating the body of this being, if you're not a very sophisticated person, if you're a simple-minded person, a Mel Gibson sort of blood and gore approach to religion might be the kind of way you express yourself. So think about that, and when you think about things like in the Christian world, why you get Spanish people in the name of Christ brutalizing the whole of South America with like so much killing and so much violence and so much cold-blooded brutality that it boggles the imagination. You have to think about those things sometimes, even if you are Christian. You know, we tend to think our religion, our culture, is always the best. The reason we think that is because we're born into it. We're just dopes. I mean, I could take you, put you in a different test tube, and you'd end up a Buddhist in Thailand. But no, you ended up a high school student in Southern California. And so, of course, where you ended up and who you are and where your ancestors got to, that's always the best. But I tried to say last time, a lot of that is asabiya or solidarity, or just tribal love. It isn't an examined life. This is an examined life. So you should think how it got to the situation where, in the name of crosses and things like that, we could literally decimate whole civilizations, not accidentally, purposefully. And by the way, it didn't just end with the Inquisitions and the American Indians and the South American Indians and those peoples. It was still going on in Yugoslavia recently. The butchering and killing that was going on in Yugoslavia in the name of I'm not freeing Islam, by the way, here. And then, of course, the Holocaust, where literally millions of people were incinerated for some imagined sin of some kind, which is normally outlined in the New Testament. You have to think where this violence comes from. And, so I think some of these symbols can be maybe encourage violence, even though they're supposed to be just the opposite. You think about that sometime, about bloody symbols. But to go back to these gods that we're talking about here, he's not drinking their blood or anything like that. Again, I'm on that subject. Drinking blood of gods goes back to the Greek religion, in the West anyway, in mystery religion ceremonies. This is how they express what they call mystery cults. And the god's blood, usually that was being drunk to get identification with the god in some symbolic way, were deities like Mithra or Dionysus, the Bacchae. And this usually tended to move towards a Bacchic frenzy when they did it. The Manes, the followers of Dionysus, would run around tearing people to bits in a kind of frenzy of intoxication of some sort. That was not maybe how it began, but that's what the trance that they got into, the wild frenzied trance that they got into from these ceremonies often ended up as, and that's how it's pictured in literature. So there is some kind of connection, I think, between these behavior patterns. This is not what we're seeing in the movie. I think we're seeing a much more mild or gentler form of activity, and that often comes in giving offerings to the so-called god, not in imbibing or eating the so-called god. Here there's no eating any gods. It's just he's giving some food offerings to that particular god. Now that seems to be widespread in, I hate to say primitive religion, but widespread in indigenous religions around the world. If you go into a Thai restaurant, many of you have been in Thai restaurants, I'm sure, you often see statues there, don't you? And there are food offerings in front of the statues. It's usually Buddha or some representation of a Buddha. How many have seen that? Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know, pieces of squash or a drink of some kind in a little glass, or a banana maybe or something. They're sitting up there in front of the statue. That's pretty, when you think of it, that's very mild. All that showing is awe, obeisance, a kind of humbling yourself before that representation, whether you agree that things should be represented or not. And but there's no, I don't think there's any violence to it. Usually when people bring offerings to a deity, think about it, I've never thought about that before, but you think about it, it's usually a very non-violent situation. They're giving something, they're not taking something. That may be part of what I was trying to express, that the psychological patterns that erupt. So in the movie, it's all very gentle as far as this offering goes, isn't it? And there's a combination of Native American, you might call it pagan, or indigenous religious feeling sensibilities with the more dominant Christian process that wiped over these areas in the conquistador other activity of missionary behavior that we know occurred from the 1600s to the 1900s. So they basically combined the two, and the character meant to be you and me learns to accept it and participate in it. And as the movie shows, it's successful. Amarante does revive. So that's another important point. When people are at the end of their extremity, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to deal with something, they often turn to religion. And the religion they turn to is the one they're familiar with, or in this case, one that seems to be working for these people. And I think that's a pretty good representation of it. You want to comment on that aspect of the movie?
I noticed that Charlie Bloom even mentioned, as he said, when he was talking to Amarante about how, they used to be pagan and something that Christianity came. It was like one part.
Any point that he made that you found specifically interesting, or just the whole description that it used to be pagan and then it became Christianized?
Just that he said that.
It's Amarante tells him, right? It's Amarante tells him? Or
No, Charlie Bloom tells
Charlie tells Amarante.
And
I didn't think Amarante would be able to put two thoughts together. He's sort of like George Bush. You can't make any more than 4-word sentences.
But he did try to think
I like Bush, by the way. I think he's funny. The other guy frightens me, so I mean, I'm not putting him down by saying he can't speak. To me, that's a plus. The stupider someone is, sometimes they're actually pretty smart. So you can't go by outward appearance. Sometimes people who think they're smart are actually pretty stupid. So it's just not something that I would say is a plus or a minus. So anyway, Charlie tells him the history of it. Charlie knows all of the history.
Yeah, and it's real, but there is truth.
Oh, it's true what he says. Yeah, certainly true. Anyway, so the movie maker shows sensitivity to that, and that's why we showed the movie, because sensitivity to these kinds of things. If you watch enough history or Discovery Channel stuff, which is all I ever watch, usually on the boob tube, and I must say I watch a lot of it, since it's my drug of choice. Being a tea, I don't drink or smoke or anything like that, so I'm entitled to a vice. And this vice lets me disappear from my family and all my connections. I just disappear, switching channels. I'm a sort of channel switcher, always looking for the lost El Dorado. And every evening I search for El Dorado and never find it. Some cheesy facsimile, but I think if I keep switching through the 500 or 600 channels, I might hit the jackpot sometime. It rarely happens. So last night I ended up watching about Athens in the classical age and Zeus. That was a good substitute. If you watch those things enough, you'll see that they had a thing on some time back about Peruvian, Indian, Native American customs. It was really interesting because they have these mountain gods there that they were showing, and they have these mountain god festivals, and it's mixed with Christianity. And the two festivals, the native Peruvian Indian festival from God knows how long back, is mixed with the overlay of the Christian festival. So the Peruvian native deity has been incorporated into the saint that a given church on this mountain has been dedicated to. And all the people from the city areas surrounding this area, Cusco and other places in Peru, this music starts going, this thunderous beating music that just never stops, and it's just pounding, 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 like for days and days and days and days on end. And then these people are coming up in huge processions, trucks, everything you can imagine, and going up to the mountain. to pay homage to the mountain god. And actually, in the old days, they used to sacrifice people up there. And they've actually found cadavers of frozen sacrifices up on the mountain of people they banged on the head with a hammer or something and left them up there for the mountain god. And somehow, with all this, what I'm talking about, it's vividly illustrated how it's combined totally with Christianity, with the sacrifice of Christ on the cross and the sacrifices they did on the mountain. And the whole thing comes together in some bloody finale. It's quite frightening, actually. If you ever get a chance to see one of those festivals, I mean, I'm not saying you should find it entertaining. It's very illuminating. Yeah.
Is that the one where they paid some of the men actually have themselves nailed to a cross?
I'm not sure if that was in it, but they actually did kill a few people up on the mountain. In fact, without, not officially, but some people were ended up missing and dead and had been sacrificed.
On that same note of the History Channel, they had this, in some area, they actually have a few men that actually have themselves nailed to crosses in a representation of religious.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the Passion of Christ deal, that you get widespread in certain people who take this really to heart and want to go through this ordeal themselves. But I don't know if that was related to the American Indian thing or not, but it may have been. Could have been. Again, anyone else have anything to contribute on that score? Okay, a few more things before we close this chapter. What about the pig? What function did the pig play aside from entertainment? Yeah, I don't know if he played a lot of point in it. I think it's another nature symbol, another totem animal, if you like, that you would get in primitive religions. The tribes would identify with animals. For some reason, animals were taken as, symbolizing or embodying either the spirit of the tribe or the people. We still do it in our nicknames for sports teams. Half the sports teams are animals because the team is trying to, embody the behavior or virtues or strengths of that particular animal. The bears, the eagles, the jaguars. And this is the long thing. This, though, pig guy, he doesn't have a lot of aggressive hostility in him. He's more of a snorker. He kind of, rustles up into the rubbish heaps and things like that. But he's a very endearing character. And I think he's there because, for entertainment purposes, for young people, the minute they see an animal in a movie, they respond to the movie for some reason. So it's very deep in the human psyche. That's why when Reagan had the movie Breakfast with Bonzo or something, that launched him to the presidency. Singing with a monkey, it really helped humanize him. Bush, as you notice, always carries that dog off the airplane to make him human. He said Clinton had a dog that he used to play with on the White House lawn. This is to humanize these people so you can identify with them. The animal humanizes them. But in this particular animal, you have the point here. Was it you who made that point? What did you see in that?
The innocent sacrifice to the God.
Yeah, he was wounded by accident. Maybe he was going to be a sacrifice. Huh?
He was the innocent one. He wasn't part of the whole.
No, he wasn't part of the whole.
And that whoever it was, Coyote something or other,
yeah,
had said that we need to have a sacrifice.
Oh, is that right? Was that it? But I thought he meant Amarante that was going to be a sacrifice.
Probably, but in reality.
But he was saying you, what? What did you say?
Amarante was involved because he actually got it and tried to defend the eagle, but the pig wasn't. Therefore, the pig was innocent, and Amarante was somewhat painted.
Okay.
I think that it was totally Americanized, but neither of the sacrifice died, which made it a feel-good movie rather than...
Right, it wasn't a Christian movie in that regard. We didn't get one man dying or one thing dying, or a pagan, one animal dying for the welfare of the whole people. Yeah. So yeah, it makes a lot of good things in it, and I think they did a really good job. I don't know if I can think of anything else that stands out particularly. I'm sure there are one or two other things, but I don't know if I recall. Yeah.
I didn't understand
got me, I don't even remember that scene. We got to,
Few scenes I've heard.
throwing rocks and pebbles. Who was she throwing rocks and pebbles at?
People.
People that walk down the street and the women sit behind the rocks.
Really? I missed her entirely. I still never seen her. I guess I haven't seen her. Really? She's right. Well, I know a lot of my students thought that all those guys with guns shooting in the air was a very familiar thing. Some people who I've had in the classes who are from similar cultural backgrounds say that that just made them laugh because apparently they witnessed that in festivities that they've seen in their areas. People suddenly start shooting wildly up in the air. Any of you witness that kind of thing in the cultural environments from where you come from? Well, I've had a few students tell me that they have. They particularly liked that part of the movie, so it obviously spoke to them.
The guy at the end that rode, when they were in the mountains, that saved Joe, the guy that rode up on the horse,
Right.
was that?
I don't know what that symbolized. I think that was just like someone who represented a local person who was fed up with everybody and just felt that the underdog should get a chance, but I don't know if it had any more symbolism. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was kind of weird because I thought he was the guy, because there were the two sheriffs that ran for the election, and the one guy won by, I think, 3 or 4 votes.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was the one who was kind of more local and down with the people. The other guy who lost was more in with the government, trying to get the whole little building process started.
Right.
And in the end, it was kind of weird to see his character change from the guy who was working for the government to the guy who started helping
It
Joe
was
out
a good. That was a good element.
he changed.
I thought it was
Exactly.
extremely.
That's who he
effective.
was.
Huh?
That's who he was, because she was just asking who he was. She just wanted to know.
Oh, I thought you
character-wise.
wanted to know what he symbolized.
Yeah, I don't know what he symbolized, but I know that's.
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
I thought
who
it was a
he
great
He
touch
just-
at the end. I mean, just because that's what some of those guys are like that. They just like sort of get fed up with everything and say, you know, come on, let's just see this thing through. I'm enjoying watching this saga. I wouldn't want it to end. That was really. So there are things in this movie that are, in my mind, very attractive and insightful. So that particularly was one. But describe now. You were saying there was an election between who? Now I'm really out in space. Explain that.
Well, what they were talking about was that they were making fun of the sheriff originally because I think
The sheriff who fell when he came down the hill?
Correct, that guy, yeah. Because they were
The
saying,
guy?
they were talking about at one point, I think between him and Joe, there was a dialogue about how, you know, the sheriff had won. There was like the town election for the sheriff, and I think he had only won by, they're talking about.
And who did he
making fun of him. He beat the other guy who ended up saving Joe
Oh,
at
he
the
beat
very
Shorty.
end.
Oh, I see.
Shorty, exactly, yeah. So I think it was kind of cool to see Shorty, you know.
So he was showing that both guys were fairly decent in the end, even though one guy seemed to be total establishment, but he wasn't in the end.
In the end, yeah, he kind of changed over.
He changed over from the local, he had local loyalties. That's a good point, just generally speaking, sociologically. Many of the problems that you see in America, I think, have to do with the fact that we have carpet-bagging policemen. I don't think that it's anything wrong with a person being a policeman or a fireman, and I'm happy people want to do those professions. But it seems to me it should be community-based. And I don't want to hurt anyone who is a policeman or fireman because I know their jobs are important to them, and often they have to find these jobs wherever they can find them. But honestly, for the good of the whole society, just speaking as an idealist, and that's what you're reminding me of, community-based policing would solve 3/4 of the problems that we're talking about, including the Iraq problem. If we had community-based policing in Iraq there, if we had anyone who had the guts to go in there and be a policeman and shoot it out with whoever needs shooting out with, the Iraq thing would soon be solved. But the same thing for our inner city problems. If we had people, and I think they're trying to do that, who are actually out of the communities and living in the communities, and when they get the jobs, don't move out of the communities, but stay in the communities. Don't then move out to some suburb someplace and have, you know, a more, shall we say, undisturbed life, but stay in there, then all these crack houses and every other gang type things that we think are endemic would be cleaned up so quickly you wouldn't believe it. And that is if people who really did their jobs the way they were supposed to and lived there. It would soon be over, they'd be split. So yeah, policemen like that who have loyalty to the population finally, even though they are authority figures, can make all of the difference. And in this movie, he made all of the difference. He became a swing figure. Didn't he? Any other observation, any other character that is of interest? I don't know if anyone could see any other interesting. Well, okay, thanks for looking at that movie. Now we come to a very odd book, which is a companion book to that, because it is talking about shamans and shamanism. And it is a really weird book. It's almost unreadable in parts. Particularly the whole second part is unreadable, where he analyzes the so-called teachings. And I don't expect or ask you to read any of that. It's so pathetically stupid and unreadable. And you see, people don't care. People don't care. They still have bought this book. It was a bestseller, so it doesn't matter. You can write complete gibberish, and as long as something in the book catches people's fancy, the book will catch on and sell. So remember, there's hope. If any of you want to be writers, there's hope for you. Half or 3/4 of your book can be tomfoolery, and if as long as a third of it or a quarter of it is exciting or magnetically attractive, you're on your way. I write. You can look me up on Amazon or any of those things, Barnes & Noble or whatever. You'll find me, including the negative comments and the positive comments. Lately there's been a write-in campaign against me, but when my book first came out, it was all positive because people couldn't understand it and they really were impressed by it. But then some fanatic idiot maniacs were told that this book is threatening, so now they've been all told to write in, even though they haven't read the book, in order to damage, because it used to have, I don't know, in Amazon it was like they would rate it, was it 5.0 or 4.0 or something. Anyway, it had this huge high rating of 4.0 or something like that, but now it's been seeping down to 3 and 2.5 because these latter day people who've been organized by hate groups against me, for instance, have been mobilizing their ranks to write stupid letters in order to bring the ratings down. But it doesn't matter. The book already sold well enough, so it doesn't matter. It's a book, by the way, you'll find in there, James, the brother of Jesus. But it isn't a lot of. I mean, there are other books that are on there from me too, but. How did I get on that subject?
You're in the bookstore, man.
Huh? Oh, that there's hope for writers. That's it. Thanks a lot. That there's hope for writers. In me, there's hope for me, because I have to admit, and if you read my book, 2/3 of it is incomprehensible. And I'm the first to, isn't that right, Noel? About half of it is incomprehensible. It's 1,000 pages, and there's only about 350 pages that are sensible, and the other 750 or 650 are really, unless you're really clever, you probably wouldn't be able to understand or make much sense out of it. But you see, there's hope for people even like me. If you can have 1/3 of it that's sensible, you're on your way. And this book here, I mean, I'm smarter than this guy. And my book is 5 times as long as his, so that makes me 5 times smarter than he is. But in any case, he wrote this as a PhD thesis. This is a PhD thesis. They weren't giving out PhDs for theses like this in my day. But anthropology is obviously an odd field. So some of you might be in that. How many are anthropologists in this room? Well, none of you. So looks like a field that's losing its draw or attractiveness. In any event, this was done at UCLA, so it makes you wonder about that institution. And this seems to have passed. But it became a cult book back in the late 60s, early 70s. And you know, it caught on at the time that LSD and all that stuff was being made popular by the Beatles and the other spin-off groups around the Beatles, the Rolling Stoners, and people like that, who are still going strong. If they were so drugged up, you'd think they'd be dead already. So you gotta say that these guys were just faking. They weren't really doing it. And I know Mick Jagger. I met him in London because his wife was interested in my book, so I got a chance to meet him just last year. And that guy is all there. And I tell you, he's not a rolling stoner. He likes women. That's his only flaw. I mean, any woman he sees, he'll like. It'll be like an antenna sort of, which is why his wife has moved out and moved him out of the house next door to him too. I think finally, even though they have about 4 or 5 children together. But those guys are all there, and those guys that last that long, believe me, they're not on drugs. They are all there. Their brain is cooking constantly, and they're totally in control of their facilities. And they know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly where they're going, and there's no lack of focus or unconscious rage or behavior going on at all. And then that's the mark, I think, of someone who really has it together and knows where they're going. People say, well, why don't you just try this? Why don't you try that? Why don't you try that? No, I like a clear mind. The whole thing of my personal life is to keep my mind clear, not befogged, not, befuddled, not like, in some other state of being which is unclear. That's a kind of, as I said, escapism. But the main thing is try to keep your brain clear. So I don't think that reading a book like this is going to bring people down or tear people down or do anything like that. Because to my mind, the thing that is most attractive is getting your brain clear, not in a state of trance or lack of clarity. So I don't think, in the end, these things are attractive at all, except to the adventurer. And the adventurer is going to look for adventure. Female or male, I don't care what it is. The adventurer type person wants new experiences. They're going to go after new experiences. That's what their aim is, and they're just into the jag, if you want to call it that, or the hype, or whatever it is that the new experience gives them. I don't know what you would call it, the high, or whatever it is that the new experience gives them. And after the experience gets old, then they go on to something else. They need that. They need that. But if you're a person who prefers clarity of mind, then these kind of experiences really do not possess you. So people say, why are you doing a book on peyote in a class like this? Well, because I think it does represent something about early religion of mankind. It was part of native South American religious practice, probably still is. People still go to these areas to get these condiments, if you want to call them that. And they're allowed to, apparently, if it's for a religious purpose. And they go from all over North and South America to harvest or collect or get a hold of some of these things to use in early religious native practices. So I think it is a good illustration. Now the question is he honest here? Is what he's telling us true, or is he faking it? That I can't say. But even if he's faking it, which I have a suspicion occasionally he is, and it's part fiction, it's still a good faith and pretty good fiction. So I think in the end, I'm somewhat convinced that he either knows about this, knows people who do know about this, or underwent these experiences to some extent himself. So even if he's a fake and a fraud, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. What does bother with me about the book, and it doesn't matter what I think, by the way, it's what you think, but I'm trying to just introduce you to the book. What does bother me about the book is that he's such a jerk. That really does get on my nerve as we go along. In other words, when maybe he's just portraying himself as a jerk or a nudnik or a pain in the neck, just to keep the thing moving. But he's always saying, Don Juan, is it really like that? Don Juan, why is it that way, Don Juan? And you sort of feel like this Don Juan would have kicked this guy out so long ago. That's why I don't even believe him half the time. He would have said, get lost, you idiot. Yeah, so there's only two reasons why, or even one reason why Don Juan, if he really existed, would have kept this complete nerd around. And that is that he knew he was going to write a book about him, so he maybe got cut into some of the profits, or he wanted his ideas to be disseminated in a wider area, and so he tolerated this idiot. Yeah?
Well, this book was in the latter part of the 60s. This was a cult thing.
Yeah, I know.
And people were all into looking for experiences through, and I read it again now and think, well, it's stupid, but in those days, you'd shoot peyote and you read this and go, ooh, wow, this is really good. And I think that Castaneda thought he was Don Juan.
Well, we'll get to that. We're getting way ahead of ourselves. When we read it, we'll see that is more like a conclusion we'll have to draw rather than a preliminary remark. But I know you're more familiar with this since you're out of the days when Don Juan was functioning. I don't think that Castaneda is too stupid to be Don Juan. I mean, that's my look. I can open anything here where he says, he asks these questions. Did the dog really play with me, as they say? Did I know all this was happening before I told you? What does it mean to be a chosen man? When did he tell you that, Don Juan? Oh, come on, man, give me a break. This guy is a walking idiot. I've had this guy about 5 minutes in my class and he's been out the door. That's what I want to tell you. But he's laughing all the way to the bank. Put it that way. So the last laugh is on his. He died recently. Actually, there was an obit of him. I think last winter. Yeah.
Can people even remember what they've been through after a drug trip?
Well, we'll see. We'll see about this book. I mean, you're supposed to be reading this book. Again, I think that how much of this should you read? Can you actually stomach it, is what I should say. I think up to about page 75 is as far as I got. So I've never gotten further, never wanted to go further. But that's up to you. The point being, so people say, are we pushing drugs in the class? No, I don't think so. I'm pushing clarity of mind. But on the other side, I think it's good to know about these things. I think the world is an interesting place. I think we're studying varieties of American religious expression and experience, if you want to call it that. And we're talking about the non-standard ones. I mean, if I were to do Christianity in this class, I could spend the whole course on it. I purposely am staying away from Christianity because people know enough about that. And I don't want to keep on beating a dead horse. I mean, today it's Protestantism, tomorrow it's Seventh Day Adventism, the next day it's Anglicans, the next day it's Baptist. No, I mean, that's not for me. I would like to do things that people don't know about. So when I'm doing, what's the title of this course? I'm doing the ones that we haven't heard much about. And I forgot to tell you that at the beginning, but that is the truth. I'm sticking away from the major ones and going according to the varieties, not the mainstream. Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that we should have looked for, or?
I don't know. We're going to go through this book together, so I can't say. I just want to give you a prelude first, and the good and bad parts of this guy. Let me see if I can get another one. Here's one. Here's an exchange. Can you just tell me where Mescalito takes you? I can't talk about it. All I want to know is if there is another world in which he takes people. There is. Is it heaven? he takes you through the sky. I mean, is it heaven where God is? You're being stupid now. I don't know where God is. I mean, one said that to another is on the list. I mean, this is the kind of guy you'd like to take his neck and wrench it like a chicken and then chuck it over there in the basket. So I can't imagine why Don Juan would have put up with this guy. That's the point I'm making. The only thing that I can assume is that Don Juan wanted his ideas to become wider spread. Or he's fictionalizing for the purpose of making money. That is Castaneda. And as you said, he's both characters.
Well, yeah, but also I think he was making fun of the groupies that were following him.
Well,
And
this was
time he did
before
this-
that happened. This is the first book he wrote, so there were no groupies for him at that time. This is their later ones maybe, but this book is the first one that he wrote, so he didn't have any groupies at this time. Yeah.
His later books, how do they compare as far
I
as?
don't know, I can't get through this one.
I was just wondering if they.
You'll have to, he made a lot of money, put it that way, and I don't think it, who knows? Again, these are questions I can't answer too well. Let me just start at the beginning here. Author's commentaries on the occasion of the 30th year of the publication of this book. Teachings of Don Juan, A Yankee Way of Knowledge, was first published in 1968. The book came as a result of anthropological field work, which I did in the state of Arizona and Sonora, Mexico. While doing graduate work in the anthropology department, I told you all this, at the University of California at Los Angeles, I happened to meet an old shaman, a Yaqui Indian from the state of Sonora. Now, there's shaman used in its proper context. That is a charismatic religious figure, not any organizational standing of any kind, but someone that the local people would perhaps consider religious or defer to him because of this charismatic perception. His name was Juan Matus. I consulted him with various professors in the anthropology department about the possibility of doing, I consulted various professors of doing anthropological field work using the old shaman as an informant. And every one of these tried to dissuade me on the basis of their conviction that before thinking about doing field work, I would give priority to the required academic subjects in general and the formalities of graduate work. And the professors were absolutely right. It didn't take any permission on their part for me to see the logic of their advice. There was one professor, however, who spurred my interest to do the work, and then he goes on to explain, the abstract ideas behind his work, and then he really gets somewhere out in space, worse than the drugs. For instance, in Roman numeral 13, we have a paragraph here, or look at the bottom of 12. Therefore, the practical actions of shamans viewed as a coherent system with its own regulations and configurations were a solid subject for serious inquiry. Such inquiry didn't have to be subject to theories built a priori or to comparisons with material obtained under the auspices of... This is the kind of thing I read in my offspring's papers that they produce for their college classes, which are like so full of jargon and it's almost like a cloud of unknowing. And here's another one. Next page. The irreducible description of what I did in the field would be to say the Yaqui Indian sorcerer Don Juan introduced me into the cognition of the shamans of ancient Mexico. By cognition is meant the process responsible for the awareness of everyday life, process which include memory, experience, perception, and the expert use of any given syntax. What? That's like Bill Clinton. What is the meaning of is? The idea of cognition was at that time my most powerful stumbling block. Oh, I can imagine it was. It was inconceivable to me as an educated Western man that cognition, as it is defined in the philosophical discourse of our day, could be anything besides a homogeneous, all-engulfing affair for the totality of mankind. Oh, it's better that he lets Don Juan speak, actually. The minute he gets into his analysis, he really does seem like he's like gone off. But he did produce this book. And as you say, it had a tremendous following. You know, it had a big following. He did very, very well by it. And what should you read? Well, read those things because they're interesting to see how he tries to express himself. Look at the next page, 15. Don Juan said that the energetic fact, which was the cornerstone of the cognition of the shaman of ancient Mexico, was that every nuance of the cosmos is an expression of energy. I guess that's why it's called the energetic fact. For their plateau of seeing energy directly, these shamans arrived at the energetic fact that the entire cosmos is composed of twin forces which are opposite and complementary to each other at the same time. They called these two forces animate and inanimate. I always find I'm going around circles with this guy. I mean, okay, maybe there are two forces and maybe that's what they are, but he certainly isn't really. He loves these things. Intent, cognitive, intent, I don't know what he's talking about. Anyway, I have no idea what he's talking about in this introduction. So let's look at the last page of it, 21, 20. These are the general conclusions that have been drawn from my immersion in the cognition of the shamans of ancient Mexico. I realized that what Don Juan had offered me was total cognitive revolution. I wish he'd dropped that word cognitive. I tried in my subsequent works to give an idea of the procedures to effectuate the cognitive revolution. I guess he must have stumbled a bit because we haven't heard much about his succession of works. In view of the fact that Don Juan was acquainting me with a live world, the process of change in such a live world never ceased. Conclusions, therefore, are only mnemonic devices or operational structures which serve the function of springboards into the new horizons of cognition. I haven't got a clue what he's talking about. I don't know what he's saying. I'm not even sure he knows, but I don't hold you responsible for anything like that except to have a good laugh, because I haven't got a clue what he's talking about. So as far as those kind of analytic, so-called dissertation, doctoral dissertation fudge that he's put in this thing to please his professors, obviously, I think you can dismiss all that as not useful to us. If you find it useful, that's great. Look, don't listen to me. I'm just one cynic, and you have to draw your own conclusions. I'm just trying to make it entertaining for you. Half of my job is being a stand-up comic, I always thought. If you could be a professor, you could be a stand-up comic like Seinfeld. There's no difference. And honestly, two professions are very similar. So our job is to try to keep people from falling asleep, and part of that is to keep them laughing. So that's half of what we do in lectures, at least some of us do. I hope I succeed a little bit occasionally. The foreword on page Roman numeral 23. So Carlos Castaneda, under the tutelage of Don Juan, takes us through the moment of twilight, through the crack of the universe between daylight and dark, into a world not merely other than our own, but an entirely different order of reality. To reach it, he has the aid of Mescalito, Yerba del Diablo, Humido, and these are in order peyote, datura, and mushroom. So there's three different groups of hallucinogens he is going to be dealing with here. So that's the, I meant the other introduction here on 27 is what I want to read. Castaneda's introduction. Hey, we're already up to Roman numeral 27, so we're doing pretty well here. What time have we got here? We're still doing okay. In the summer of 1960, I'm going to read you bits of this, and then we'll try to comment on things that we find interesting. I'll read you bits because I have the feeling that I can't depend on you to read it yourself. Now, I know you can read, but, you know, reading things often takes 2 or 3 reads in order to get anything out of a thing. Just the first read, you're just kind of like being acquainted with the shower, cold water shower feeling of getting into a new universe. And by the second and third read, you might figure out what he's talking about. So aside from novels or things which are easier, these kind of books usually take 2 or 3 reads. So even though I want you to read it, and I do, and I hope you don't come in here and just wait for me to read it, and I'm sure 3/4 of you are doing that, still, even though I know you're cheating on me like that, I still do it like this because I know at least one read with me is better than one read with you. So if that comes out to be 2 reads, one that you did and one together, we're already ahead of the game. So all I want to do in this class is acquaint you with what these people have to say, and that's the best. I mean, I don't have anything to say, so the best I can do is midwife these people for you. And if these people have anything interesting to say, then we've had an interesting course. If they don't, the course is a bust. But I think some of the people are interesting. I think he's pretty interesting ultimately, even though I'm laughing at him. He is funny, and you got to have a sense of humor in order to, even begin bothering. In the summer of 1960, which is way long ago, you see, much earlier than this book came out, in 68, you say it came out? Something like that. While I was an anthropology student, boy, he's been there a long time, University of California, Los Angeles, I made several trips to the Southwest to collect information on the medicinal plants used by the Indians of that area. So he was pretty early in this drug movement that gripped the mid and late 60s into the early 70s. The events, of course, is still around from what my next generation people tell me. The events I describe here, and if you see that movie Garden State, which I saw recently and which the people who were watching seem to enjoy quite a lot, about the suburbs of New York and New Jersey. That's why it's called Garden State. How many saw that movie? I'm the only one, yeah. Well, I came from that town, so I wanted to see what that guy had to say about my hometown. And Zach Braff, if you've heard of him, he's in some comedy series of some kind. I saw it down at UC Irvine complex of movie theaters down there where they actually show intelligent movies occasionally. And I noticed that it was pretty full of people your age and that they were really enjoying it. It was really speaking to them, and they were laughing at all of the jokes, and when it was serious, they were dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And though the movie didn't say anything to me personally, I could see that it was effective in its effect on people who were watching it, particularly people of your generation and age, most of you here. So I think that movie is going to be successful, and apparently it is getting successful. But it does picture a drug scene from my hometown, my old hometown, I must say, that was never there when I was a kid. That's all that I can tell you. So it was quite surprising me to see how deep into this world these suburban communities have gotten, even to the present time, if that's an accurate representation of something of what goes on there. You would be able to comment on that more than me. So this scene doesn't seem to have been restricted to the 60s and early 70s. It seems to have kept on limping along into our own period quite effectively. Again, you'd be better able to judge that than me. So I don't think things like LSD and stuff like that are particularly very popular anymore. And I don't know anyone who's doing peyote particularly, but there's other spin-offs of these things that apparently are more popular. For a while, I think there was E, wasn't there? And then some other stuff that I don't even know what they do. My kids tell me the names, and I can't absorb all this new information. In any case, I made several trips, so this is pretty early on, to collect medicinal plants. The events I describe here began on one of my trips. I was waiting at border town for a Greyhound bus, talking with a friend who had been my guide and helper in the survey. Suddenly he turned toward me and whispered that the man, a white-haired old Indian, who was sitting in front of the window, was very learned about plants, especially peyote. I asked my friend to introduce me to this man. My friend greeted him. They went out, shook his hand. After they had talked for a while, my friend signaled me to join them. Now, this kind of writing is better, what she does here. But immediately left me alone with the old man, not even bothering to introduce me. He was not the least embarrassed. I told him my name. He said that he was Don Juan. He was a Juan, and that he was at my service. He used the Spanish polite form of address. We shook hands at my initiative, and then remained silent for a time. It was not a strained silence, but a quiet, natural, and relaxed on both sides. Though his dark face and neck were wrinkled, showing his age, it struck me that his body was very youthful, if you like, agile and muscular. I then told him of my interest in obtaining information about medicinal plants. Although in truth I was almost totally ignorant about peyote, I found myself pretending that I knew a great deal, and he was suggesting that it might be to his advantage to talk with me. So now this conversation sounds believable. The way he presents it sounds believable, the way he presents himself. As I rattled on, he nodded slowly and looked at me but said nothing. I avoided his eyes, and we finished by standing the two of us in dead silence. Finally, after what seemed a long time, Don Juan got up, looked out the window, his bus was coming, he said goodbye and left the station. And I was annoyed at having talked nonsense to him, at being seen through by those remarkable eyes. When my friend returned, he tried to console me for my failure to learn anything from Don Juan. He explained the old man was often silent, non-committal. The disturbing effect of the first encounter was not easily dispelled. I made a point of finding out where Don Juan lived. Later visited him several times. At each visit I tried to lead him to discuss peyote, but without success. We became nonetheless good friends. So he goes through a certain initiative period. He, in this book, is like the other boy from the East in the movie. He's a little less innocent than the boy from the East in the movie, but the two characters are basically equivalent in how they are presented and what their interests are. Both are trying to ingratiate themselves into Native American behavior, activity, culture in the Southwest in order to learn more about it, right? So we do have a certain parallel there. Let me just finish up this introduction, and next time we'll go deeper into this. I just get you into the book. The friend who had introduced me to Don Juan explained later the old man was not a native of Arizona, but was a Yaqui Indian from Sonora, south of the border. Recently they made that movie about horses with Matt Damon. What's the name of that movie? You know that movie where he goes and looks for his horses in northern Mexico?
All the pretty horses.
Oh, yeah, that was it. All the Pretty Horses. How many saw that? I think that goes into some of these areas that we're talking about. And he actually portrayed some of these people. Some of the characters that he had in that movie looked a lot like I pictured Don Juan. Look, wait a second, let's finish this paragraph. At first I saw Don Juan simply as a rather peculiar man who knew a great deal about peyote and spoke Spanish. But the people with him, with whom he lived, believed he had a certain secret knowledge, that he was a brujo. The Spanish word brujo means in English medicine man, cure, witch, sorcerer. It connotes essentially a person who has extraordinarily and usually evil powers. So we're now getting into what a brujo is in southwestern Native American mixed with Christian culture. We'll pick up there next time. Thank you.